Blessings in the love and in the light of our one infinite Creator. Welcome, my sisters and brothers. I am Robert, humble messenger of the Law of One. It is such a pleasure to share with you conscious channeling of LL research. The question for today, QO, has to do with how a person can really know another self without projecting a portion of one's own self on what you're seeing. When do we start seeing more clearly what's already there? We are those of the principle known to you as QO, and we greet you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator, in whose service we come to you. It is our great privilege and pleasure to be called to your meeting this day, and we thank the Circle of Seeking for choosing to come together to seek the truth. We are most pleased to share our opinions with you on the interesting question you have asked this day, and would ask one thing in return. We would ask that you please engage, respect, and use your powers of discrimination, for we are not authorities who wish to impress with our opinions. Rather, we are your companions on the road to seeking the Infinite One. In order for us to feel free to share our thoughts, we need to know that you will be able to reject those things that we say that do not resonate for you personally. We ask you to keep only those things that do resonate and seem to have a real value to you. With that understood, then we feel free to share our opinions concerning the question of how one may know another entity without distortion. The word distortion suggests in its derivation that there is a twisting, a pressure of twisting change that is being applied to that which is being distorted. And in that wise, it is perhaps not the clearest possible term. However, we are unable to find one within your language system that is any closer to that which is meant by distortion. Indeed, nature is as it is. The creative principle is as it is. The one great original thought, the logos, or the creator, is precisely what it is. And yet, since that beingness or essence comprises all that is, the creative principle is an immense, or perhaps we should say an infinite term, disclosing a being of infinite essence. In the heart of your selfhood, a person within incarnation, this Godhead principle, this one great original thought, functions as the self. The way this instrument is fond of putting it in her Christian walk is a quotation from the one known as Joel Goldsmith. Christ is the I of me. Each entity then has the same basic essence. However, this essence is carried within the heart of each cell of the body, within the heart of each thought, within the heart of each true emotion. It is not the whole of that apparent cell in the body or thought or emotion. It is the in-living principle. Now, all that is brought into incarnation in terms of your experiences as a human being in incarnation is distorted. You and your guidance system, the higher self, have created a kind of clothing for your beingness within incarnation that is what this instrument calls the personality shell, and what your psychologists have called the ego. Perhaps you have noticed in your own life that when they are born, children do not come into incarnation as a blank slate. Rather, they enter the incarnation with a decided personality shell, or ego structure. Each entity has created a personality shell in order to have the resources necessary for studying and working with some few key incarnational lessons or issues. Each entity within this circle, for instance, has chosen 2 or 3, or in some cases 4 incarnational issues. In most cases, these were chosen in order to better the point of balance within the energy vehicle that contains many aspects of the overall essence, not only of yourself within incarnation, but of yourself outside of incarnation and of the nature of the family relationships that have been your support and your context as a soul through many, many cycles of learning. This is an extended self, and each entity's extended self eventually connects with all other entities in a living and real bond, so that all are quite literally one within the stream of humanity, shall we say, that is in incarnation and is within the planetary influence, outside of incarnation in the physical sense. It is apparent on the consensus reality level that each entity is a mystery to itself and to others. It is never apparent that all entities have a living, solid connectivity. It is never obvious that the ties that bind, shall we say, in terms of energy fields and the accommodations of other energy fields by one's own energy field are of a unitary nature. From the conscious mind standpoint, one cannot know the essence of another's thoughts. One cannot know the true motivations for their actions and so forth. Consequently, entities spend incarnational time not being aware of the present moment, but rather working to improve the information base which they have about other selves close to them in order that they may more accurately predict the thought processes that are being hidden from view by other selves. In some cases, the exercises of open communication reduce the anxiety and the sense of confusion that come from not knowing what another entity is thinking. But in most cases, there is little opportunity or realistic chance of creating a perfect communication in which all distortions are balanced and all projections balanced in such a way that they are transparent rather than reflective. From this standpoint, then, it would seem that it is not possible to know another entity without distortion. But as the one known as V suggested, turning the gaze inward, is the solution any different? Are you not a mystery to yourself? Do you not question your own motives endlessly? Are you not honestly puzzled many times by that which is being felt by the self within? Is there any time in which you are able to say to yourself, I know myself backwards and forwards. I know what I am capable of and what I can do. I know what I am and why I am here. I know all of it. I have no more questions. I am completely aware. We salute those within the circle who may feel that they can say absolutely that they know who they are. We find in this instrument's mind that she is always surprising herself by what her responses are in the moment. Sometimes this entity is happy with those responses, and sometimes she judges herself, perhaps harshly, for those same responses. Whatever her processes of judgment, however, the surprises keep coming because the novelties of new situations, new energies, and new combinations of events create situations which have not been met before. As the response to the novel situation develops, the first person to be surprised by that response is the self, before it ever gets out into the world of other selves. The self is learning about the self at all times. Indeed, this process recapitulates the action of the Creator in knowing itself. If one could see the vast creation of entities who are working their way around this circle of being to the Godhead principle once more, one could see the process of planting the crop of consciousness and reaping the harvest of new experiences, new thoughts, and new learning. This is a process that is attempted by the self within incarnation, but always with imperfect results because of the fact that this particular illusion has its finite boundaries and its present distortions, shall we say, built into the illusion, so that were one to become immensely skilled at manipulating the consensus illusion of your reality, one would still be skilled only at understanding and using that which is a very tiny part of a large system, most of which cannot be known within incarnation, but only seen as if by reflection or by the silhouette of light being stopped by an object. Yet one is not actually able to see into the essence, either of self or the other self. Nevertheless, in unknowingness, in mystery, the work, the joy, the process of discovering the self continues. And in that process, there lie sources of information that are wonderfully rich and abundant. Those sources of information begin with the self, continue with interactions with other selves, and are rounded by interactions with a vast panoply of energies within your natural world, within the world of ideas, and within discarnate principles and entities with which the essence of the inner self interacts on the unconscious level. All of these sources of information fall like rain and sunbeams and all manner of life-giving attributes into the field of self, causing those seeds that have been planted in the personality shell to begin their process of seeking the light, expressing their form and their habit, and developing their characteristic blooms and blossoms of being. Each of you is a very organically, muscularly organized entity. Each of you is a very organically organized entity. The structure of your deeper mind is as well put together as your skeleton and has as many appropriate functions. It is rather difficult to express to you the complexity of your system as a living being, but perhaps it is enough to recall the way the energy body, but perhaps it is enough to recall the way the energy body is made within your density of the yellow ray body. You have the subdensities of red through violet within third density. In each of those subdensities, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet, contains 7 sub-subdensities, so that each chakra, shall we say, in the energy body is a fully integrated system within itself. Then, as a system, it is further fully integrated as one being. This layering of bodies or states of beingness within the system that is you is infinite. Potentially. In most entities' cases, there are perhaps 3 or 4 levels of beingness which are plumbed during incarnation. In a circle such as this, with entities that have been doing inner work and spiritual processes for a considerable time, perhaps you begin to penetrate into more and more layers or levels of being. Each one has its characteristic environment, experiences, and learnings to offer. All of them are colored by the characteristic nature of their place within the energy vehicle. In this complexity, it is as if you were a world, a globe, or an orb that rotated around the sun of your origins, the one infinite creator. Within that orbit, then each of you is, as a star, as a life-giving, radiant being. And so as you, in your orbit, meet others in their orbits, there is a strength and a power to each entity which comes from its orientation within its own orbit. One may observe that some entities have very even orbits, and this is expressed within consensus reality by the impression that such an entity is stable or has a characteristic point of view that can be well known. Other entities have more of an eccentric orbit, as though their roundness as an entity were not yet completed, and as though there were irregularities and as though there were irregularities which would cause the eccentricities of an unequal orbit. And in your consensual reality, this would appear as entities who do not seem to have very well integrated personalities, who perhaps are fooling themselves or unable for some reason to come into a comfortable relationship with the self in an integrated way. Sometimes these entities will appear to be mentally disturbed, as this instrument would say. In other cases, it is almost impossible to detect the eccentricity in the inner orbit that has been carefully compensated for within the entity's outer life. Yet still, that inner lack of harmony or roundness of the orbit has its fruit in that sense one gets when attempting to understand the person that one has not quite gotten that person. This is generally due to the fact that such an entity has not been able to get their own nature so that the lack of clarity may well not be that which is a part of the being that you are attempting to understand. In other words, it is often the case when an entity is feeling that there is a lack of clarity in one's understanding of another self, that other self has that precise difficulty with the self, and consequently is not capable of offering the self in a non-eccentric way, but rather must hold, in somewhat randomized form, the various aspects of the personality shell. It is a part of the eternal wisdom to assume that which one thinks about another entity speaks more about that person than about the other entity. And we feel that this is part of that which the one known as G was attempting to balance when the question was formed. And it is our opinion that this universally accepted bit of wisdom is the truth. The impressions and opinions that each entity forms of another self will always have a significant bending or distortion, which is the result of the self picking up those qualities and aspects of another self's personality shell, which speak either well or poorly to the self about the self. Many is the time that this instrument has formed a judgmental opinion of another self, only to reflect at a later and less stressful time that the reaction which she had was an indication of a part of her own self's dark side, at which the self did not wish to look. So the other self that is being perceived judgmentally is simply the bearer of the news, if it could be called news. That is the shadow side of the self, and this is what it looks like. Here is a mirror. This is the other self's gift to you. It is a gift. You, meanwhile, are, by your honest and unstudied reactions to that which occurs around you and to the other selves around you, performing the vital and valuable service of mirroring to others so that they may see themselves in you. It is a part of the endless process of getting to know the greater self, which is you. All those with whom you come in contact, all those with whom you never come in contact as far as you know, and those beyond the pure view of the planet, such as ourselves. It is a dynamic, infinite, and ongoing process. And each creation of the Creator, with all of its infinite time and space and process, is just a heartbeat of the infinitely extensive experience of the Godhead principle, knowing itself. Can one find resources for knowing another without distortion? We believe so. But we couch that with all of the foregoing limitations to attempt to indicate the difficulties involved in attempting to understand the system from within the system. Hey, sweetheart.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you doing? This kind of energy, this kind of intention, this kind of energy, this kind of intention is very helpful for several reasons. First of all, the energy put into the self is never wasted. It may seem as though it were selfish to take time with the self, to sit with the self, to listen to the self, to go beyond the self and rest in creatorness. It is not at all selfish, however, to spend time in these pursuits, for you are improving the characteristics of your energy field in the direction of clarity and balance. Further, work done upon the self is rest taken from work done attempting to control or manipulate other selves. When there is more self-knowledge, there is almost automatically less need to control situations or to manipulate other selves. For the energies of the self are felt to be strong and powerful, and there is not a concern that one's strength and power might be taken away or limited by the narrowness of another entity's perceived viewpoints. Further, with self-knowledge comes that which we would call kindness, or gentleness, or humility. There is a softness that comes with self-knowledge, so that an entity that is another self, though he or she perhaps cannot explain why, feels more comfortable and more him or herself when with you. In this atmosphere, self is able to reveal self to you in an unthreatened and secure manner. And consequently, knowledge of self creates an atmosphere in which open communication may be sharpened, heightened, deepened, and enhanced. We encourage time with the self, whether it be walking in the woods or gazing at a candle in the dawning hours, or in the meditations that many within this group observe as a daily ritual. These forms of moving within the self and asking in the silence for awareness to come are all very helpful. in terms of strengthening the energy field of the self, and at the same time creating the atmosphere in which energy fields are able to encompass and embrace other energy fields without any sense of threat or judgment. Because of the eccentric orbits, shall we say, the choppy waters of some personality shells, some entities are much more grateful to be around than others, in terms of what is perceived from the energy emanating from the other self. And this cannot be, shall we say, fixed or balanced by the self. However, within that limitation of seeing accurately that which another self is putting out, the more self-aware an entity is, the less distorted will be that channel between self and other self. And the more accurately the information from other self to self and vice versa may flow. So, in sum, it is our feeling that the intention to know the self or another self without distortion is the intention to seek the truth. When the truth is being sought within the self, that intention will communicate to other selves. And as this energy improves within the self, the information stream coming from other selves shall also necessarily improve. It is not a matter of literally figuring someone out, for a person is not a closed system. A person is an evolving part of an evolving creator. Rather, it is a matter of dwelling within a mystery, of dwelling in that which is seen of the mystery, and in telling stories to oneself, about the experiences of living in such a way that the self is opened more and more to the amazing amount of information that is falling from the inner planes and from the world about one, and from the self to the self at all times. The intention to know the truth is key. Keep the intention pure and the heart open, so that all has the benefit of that great sun, which is unconditional love. That shall ripen the fruit of your acquaintanceships like nothing else can. Resting in love, letting unconditional love flow through the being and out into the world is the best start one could have at seeking the truth of another self. We are those of QO. May we thank all of you for resting so sweetly within the circle and sharing energy with each other in such an unselfish and beautiful way. It is a great inspiration to us to see entities come together on levels that are deeper than words and deeper than the conscious mind. We thank you for helping to support and enrich each other with your thoughts, your experiences, and your sharing. We thank you for your studies and your seeking, and for all that you are. Each of you is most beloved to us, and we appreciate the beauty of each. Thank you so much for sharing this time with us. It has been a great pleasure. We leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. In the remainder of your day and your evening, may you find reason to rejoice and give thanks. We leave you in the love and in the light of the one infinite Creator. We are known to you as the principle of QO. Adone, my friends. Adone Vasu. I love you.